Hi everyone, my name is Kirby Miller, and this is the discussion video for chapter 1. I want to start off here with some of the things that I learned. First being, it's actually a quotation that I wrote down to make sure that I said it correctly. But it says, "There's a fiber optic line running into the observatory's door at the Royal Naval Observatory at Greenwich, which signifies the prime meridian." Now, I'm not here to tell you that I just learned about the prime meridian. Sorry. But I am here to tell you that I was never under the impression that there was an actual line, like a physical line that you could go and see. So, potentially having the opportunity to see that one day is fascinating to me. Along with that, the Global Positioning System, so our GPS, obviously, it's something that I'm sure most of us are familiar with, but, we don't quite understand sometimes the extent of the technology that we're using, and we often take advantage of that, myself included. I know that there's more to it than just pressing the fancy button on your phone, to say, enable location, to use your GPS. I know that, but I guess before reading the chapter, I did not realize the complexity of the overall system. So I wrote down the stats for it, and it said that there are 24 navigational satellites, 21 operational satellites, 3 active spares, and 5 ground-based monitoring stations. So that comes to a total of 53 total systems. 53. I maybe would have guessed 10, maybe. But that's fascinating to me that there are that many different systems for something we click a button for. How crazy is that? But to kind of transition into the next topic about some things I found interesting, which most of the categories that I have written down relate to something that I found interesting. Obviously why I wrote it down. But kind of sticking with this space theme here, regarding the Hubble Space Telescope, it had it down that it launched in 1990. It came about kind of in the 1940s-ish, and then gradually became an actual technological advance, like development, and then it wasn't launched until 1990. But if you think about that now, that's only 29 years ago. 29 years ago. That's crazy to me. That we've only had this for 29 years. In my head, I'm thinking, we've had this for just years on end, and, but it really hasn't been that way. There's a lot of advances in knowledge that we've been exposed to, just in my lifetime. I'm 22 years old, going to be 23 this year. I'm almost as old as the telescope, That is mind-blowing to me. That's something I never would have guessed that, is that, I guess, young, quote-unquote, in age, But I think sometimes we don't realize how well off our generation is. And it's not particularly my generation, but, the younger generations, how far they've come in technological advances. And really, some very big ones have been made just in the last 30 years. So that was quite fascinating to me. And then also there was a note saying that the Earth was being referred to as smooth, which I guess when you think about it, I think we're so, in our own bubble, I guess, that we think, oh, there's the mountains, there's the trains, there's, this and that. Why would you refer to it as smooth? So I found that was interesting when they go through, the peaks of the mountains and the depths of, some of the oceans, and just kind of going about, that reference point. So I just found that interesting that they referred to it as smooth. moving on, a few things that I want to know a little bit more about. So I'm sure most of us have, done the whole find the North Star thing, looking outside. I live in the country, so seeing the North Star is a common thing for me. They talked about, Polaris being used by a lot of sea voyagers, things like that for, navigation. And there's a lot of things that they do, just in regular voyages. Doesn't necessarily have to be, with people who are on ships or and whatnot. But, I've always thought about, I've heard the practice and understand what they're doing. But, is this something that you go to school for? There's got to be some sort of practice going on here, because I'm sure you don't just walk outside one day or just go and get in a ship one day and be like, oh, I'm just going to use, the North Star as my point of reference. I don't think it would go very well. So I'm really curious to find out, what's the process for that? Where do you start? Is it something that you just study in your own time? Do they teach it in a particular school? Is there a trade school for this? Or is it something that's just, passed down, throughout the different generations? And so I found that to be a topic that I really enjoy to dig deeper into. And then outside of that, just kind of 3 questions in general over the topic of chapter 1. The first question is a little bit more critical thinking, and it might be a little odd where I'm coming from this, but I'll just read it to you because it's a little out there. It says, how would scientists determine the age of the Earth by using items such as rocks and minerals? Now, I know that they went over and they talked about some of the radioactive stuff and just different tools that they used, but in my head, theoretically, the subject matter that was tested, could have been in existence before the Earth, before the formation of the Earth, if they want to go back and use the Big Bang Theory as, their pivotal point of the creation of the Earth. So my thought process is, if that material was already in existence, well, of course it's going to date back millions of years. So how would you distinguish, that as being the start of the Earth? You understand what I'm saying? So it's a little bit more critical thinking and a different angle to come from for that question. Might not be easy to answer. But then my second question, it said in the chapter that, and I've heard this before, that from at any given time, you can see 5 to 8 satellites from Earth. And I've heard this before, but my question is, where do you see them? Are they in particular locations where you can see them? Or is it just, some generic, I guess I've never really seen, I guess I've never acknowledged, that I've seen a satellite. So I'm curious, where are those opportunities, that you can always see them? Because I don't feel like I have. So interesting, to know if it's an actual particular location you should be at to see these said 5 to 8 satellites. And then thirdly, it talked about kind of like the cycle, the water cycle and stuff. I think it was like the hydrologic, I don't know, I can't say it right. But it said the rate of removal of water from a reservoir must equal the rate of addition of it. So I found that kind of interesting, which it makes sense. You want to create balance. But my question referring to that, statistic, or not really statistic, but fact, what would occur if there was an imbalance? Is that what happens when, we see the drastic weather changes? Is that, would there be a disaster? How do you, I'm not really sure how you would measure that, but I'm sure somebody else has had that question as well. So maybe the answer is out there for me. So I look forward to hearing from all of you, and hopefully you enjoy your semester this year. I am. So nice chatting with you.